Sierra Leone will turn 64 years in just 5 days. The country gained independence on April 27, 1961. This date marks a significant milestone in the nation's history as it signifies the end of British colonial rule and the beginning of Sierra Leone's journey as a sovereign state. Now, since 1961, only two parties have ruled the country, the SLPP and the APC. This morning, as we discuss build-ups, we ask, between the SLPP and the APC, who should be blamed for the country's current state, politics, good governance, and the economy, among other development? What gains have we made? So this morning, to chart the way forward, we've been joined by Lawrence Leema. He's National Publicity Secretary of the Sierra Leone People's Party, and flanked by Sidi Tunis. Sidi is the National Publicity Secretary of the main opposition, All People's Congress. Good morning, gentlemen. It's a pleasure having both of you.
Good morning, and thank you very much. Pleasure having us.
I'll start with you, Leema. What gains have we made as a country since independence? Quite a journey, actually. 64 years is not 64 days. Surely not all is bad. There are some good. In your books, what are the goods?
Yes, as a country, we've tried as best as possible to manage our cultural differences because for any nation to thrive, that nation has to be united. And so our approach in the first place in gaining independence was a divided one. We did not go to the independence table with the sense of unity. Of course, you had one party that was calling for independence before elections or elections before independence, and so that division had actually been responsible principally for the retrogressions we experienced as a nation. But as a country, we've tried as best as possible to manage those differences, so much so that we have come so far to keep the nation going without any breakdown.
Sidi, from your end, what are the goods? What should we celebrate?
Well, thank you very much. I mean, clearly, 1961 to date, the country has gone through several different stages of transformation. The independent conversation itself, if you look at it, you know that there were different views as to how that ought to have been achieved. You know, some were of the view that the constitution should have been more in the interest of Sierra Leone. Others saw it as a did not gain much. But in any case, we attained independence. And the country has grown since then. When you look at different stages in terms of the size of the country then and now is different in terms of population, new settlements and all. And through that, we've had infrastructural development in some areas. Today we're talking about democracy. You know, the governance structure then is different from what it is today. We're talking about cohesion, we're talking about human rights. A lot of cultural differences have also taken place. But then also in the areas of education, even where we're seeing expansion in terms of the education.
Honorable Tunis, I apologize, I would have to interject for a while. I've just been beckoned that your mic seems to be having some glitch. We shall be back. We're going for this short break. Please bear with us.
You want fast and reliable internet? Starlink na the answer. Starlink they give you fast speed, low delay and reliable connection, no matter who you dey. You dey able get an now authorized retailer, 52 Shaka Stevens Street, Freetown. Stay connected to the world with no interruption. No miss one moment. Get Starlink today. We get Starlink standard kits, mini kits and the high performance kits. Call we now by 076 375 680 and enjoy internet with sweet, fast, and reliable. Starlink will keep you connected anytime and anytime.
Feels good to see your face again. It's been a very crazy day. The joyous feeling in the air when rain falls on a sunny day.
Happy, yeah. Let the stars, let the roll.
Enjoy life's little pleasures with Maltina. Maltina. Share happiness.
Welcome back. We truly apologize for that abrupt, disturbance due to a technical glitch. We've been hearing from Mr. Tunis, who was making a submission. Please, would you mind to continue where we left off?
Yes, the governance structures that we have even today have improved in terms of institutions that have been established to ensure that we function better, as a country or as government. Our focus on making sure that we are in line with some international benchmarks, all put us in positive direction. And also the introduction of technology. Now we are also striving to ensure that we include technology and innovations in our ways of lives and our governance structures and in the way how we approach issues that have to improve the lives of the people of this country. So when you look at all of how we have transitioned over the years from the 60s to date, you will say that in those areas we have made improvement, but that is not to say that we don't have challenges. Of course, we have numerous challenges. Like I stated earlier, our population has grown, the country has expanded, and so are our cities. And, the opportunities are not spread across the country. So because of that, we're seeing a lot of urbanization. People are moving to urban cities, thereby, increasing the burden, on those cities and making it very difficult, for certain facilities to, be spread among citizens or inhabitants in those cities. So that going forward into the discussions, probably we'll have to profile real solutions as to how we approach some of these challenges, so that at the end of the day, they can be solved once and for all.
So Leema, do you think at 64 we should have achieved better than this?
Yes, I think so. In the first place, like I started, if we had gone into that independence conference with one voice, we should have been able to negotiate better and for us to be able to harness better opportunities. But because we went divided selfishly, without even acknowledging those who sacrificed, who spilled their blood for the liberation of Sierra Leone, without acknowledging their efforts, we went there divided, with our own motives different, for us not to even have that. And you know what? Manipulations thrive on divisions. And as much as we are divided, we will not engage meaningfully that will help us actually have a better Sierra Leone as to what we are expecting. And so because of that division we went with, that is what eventually led us into having wars in this country, And because one party is making him or herself, available as opposed to the other party who is looking for the interests of the country. These other parties making itself available as to how best they will see them as a better options to this, not the interests of the country. Let's take, for instance, the transition of what had been the engagement before colonization. Let's go into slavery, which was the vogue of the time. And of course, slavery was abandoned. And then we also, the colonial powers saw the need to go into a conference for the partition of Africa in order to extract raw materials for their industries abroad. So, and at a time like that, when they were deciding to give us independence, but with the view of extracting raw materials, that was when we as citizens should have come together to have a better mind, to sit and discuss, looking at the interest, what's the interest of our colonial powers, how do we discuss, now that we are going into independence, how do we discuss so that the raw materials they are extracting from Sierra Leone, how do we benefit from those? And so because we went divided, one particular set of the country's population seemed to be making these raw materials available at a cost that is at the expense of the nation, whilst the other party is looking at it as to how best the country can benefit. So it's all as a result of the division that we have not been able to benefit as much as we are supposed to have been benefited. Because of the division, we went into that conference without paying much attention, and that actually eventually led us to war. And so after the war, we've come back with so many opportunities, having, of course, an expatriate at a point in time, I would say, in the helm of affairs, who was President Kaba, who was able to harness resources for the rebuilding of Sierra Leone. And he did his best by ensuring that we were able to have the war finished, and at the same time have governance structures in place, created new institutions, and also he was able to ensure that Sierra Leone was debt-free. And aside of that, he was able to actually, he was able to leave substantial amount for the incoming administration to be able to start off. Contrary to that, we've had the APC-led regime under the leadership of President Ernest Bai Koroma, who came in, starting off from at least a very reasonable economy. And of course, under their regime, they had a buoyant economic boom, yet because of poor management or economic mismanagement, we are left with what I would say austerity. In other words, the economy was at the brink of collapse. And so for us as a party, the SLPP government, we approach the economy with a different wavelength, which has helped us to be able to still maintain the economy and still help progression in the economy as it is. So what approach did we use? At the time when all donor partners have left, they've turned their back on Sierra Leone because of poor economic management, we came in the first 3 months, even when we had our flagship project to roll out without economy, but in the first 3 months, because of we came in with sound economic policies that is diversifying the economy and seeing how best we can mobilize revenue from different quarters, because largely since 1930, Sierra Leone has been heavily dependent on the extractive industry as the main source of revenue for our economic growth. And so the SLPP administration saw it that, no, we need to approach our economic management from a different wavelength. So in an event we are faced with any shock globally, we'll be able to still sustain, or we'll still come in as a resilient nation to survive whatever shock. But if we peg our dependency on just one sector of the country's economy, and if there's any shock in that, it affects us as a nation, and it affects our growth. And so we approach that differently with the single treasury account and also the diversification of the economy. That is helping us so much that we are making progress now, that in spite of the fact that this particular administration in all its terms, it had experienced a series of challenges, not locally, but globally as well, but yet we have done our best because of the prudent economic management to still sustain the country's economy and still manage the country's fiscal policy and having the country still running. And now we are not only dependent on the mining sector, we're also looking at the agricultural sector and also service sector that is also helping in our revenue generation to help the country move. In terms of governance, yes, we are not there yet because of our past experience of what we experienced before the war. And so that mindset, corruption and all the rest. So we came in with, of course, with an approach to rebrand the image of governance and at the same time also rebrand the image of the country. And so it has been challenging because people have been accustomed to one way of governance practices in the nation, which is selfish in nature, which is probably gearing towards their own personal benefits. But as a government, we came in with the mindset that as a nation, we need to rebrand our mentality, our mindset as to how much we can see this nation move forward. And so in all of those approaches we have used for us to actually move the country forward, we've been able to make progress such that as it is now, the economy is making a slow, even though slow, but it's making progress in terms of what we are receiving from the mining sector, which is the extractive sector, the agricultural sector, looking at the industries that are in now within the agricultural spheres, especially for, we now have institutions, industries that are now adding value additions to our local products we are producing in this country, and also with also new reviews in our laws. We have been able to put ourselves in a better position as to how we can also add our beneficiation from the extractive industries. Because if you look at what had happened before, like we're going into mining agreements or laws have been passed in Parliament with not much interest for the progress of the nation, save for 3% royalties. In most of our agreements we've passed, that has been the only source of benefit for the nations apart from taxes. With the review in the laws, we are now positioned in such a way that even the states should now be able to participate commercially in the extractive industries by going into either shares with other investment companies, having the shared ventures where we venture into extractions and see how best we can benefit 50-50s. Apart from that also, the state, with the new laws or the reviews of our mining laws, the state also stands to benefit at least 10% equity, which is also an improvement that this administration has made so far in helping improve the livelihood of our citizens and also put the country in a better state. So yes, if we had approached independence with the mindset of unity, devoid of our disagreements, but let's see how much we could have entered that negotiation with our colonial masters for the benefit of Sierra Leone. I am very certain we would have far gone beyond where we are today. But as a country, we think we have maintained a progressive mindset. Even after the war, we've still seen ourselves as a nation that we need to work collectively. We need to work together to see how much we can harness our resources, whether human, whether agricultural, whether extractive, for the benefit of Sierra Leone.
Well, since independence, every governance structure that we had a focus. I'll just focus, since we don't have much time, I'll focus from the Anescoma era to date. Prior to him ascending into governance, of course, we had interregnums wherein we've had military regimes. We've had one of the most civil, brutal war in this country that caused us a lot of brain drains, infrastructural damages to our nation, even affected our nation's economy. We took over from the SLPP government of Ahmed Tijan Kaba with, probably 5 megawatts electricity, for example, and we improved on that. By the time we left office, we had over 100 megawatts electricity, with more than 60 megawatts in Freetown, and over 50 chiefdoms connected through the rural electrification program. We had over 2,000 kilometers of roads done in this country, first class, all of our major roads connecting the cities and the two neighboring countries were done under former President Ernest Bai Koroma. We focused on the agenda for change, which transformed this nation in terms of education, infrastructure, energy, education. We came in with the agenda for prosperity in the second term. We focused on diversifying the economy. So if you hear Leema talking about, single treasury account, for example, this was the initiative of the Ernest Bai Koroma government. If you hear him talking about diversifying the economy, focusing on tourism and extractive industries, these were the initiative of the Ernest Bai Koroma government, because we felt it was time for us to transform this nation. And in terms of economic management, we have never experienced a boom in this country under any government like we saw in the Ernest Bai Koroma government. At some point before the Ebola and before the fall in the prices of the iron ore, we were the fastest growing economy. And that reflected on the lives of the people of this country, which is why we were able to give granting aid to students in universities. We were able to offer free scholarships to female students, offering sciences and technology courses from elementary level all the way to university level, which is why we were able to reduce the cost of education for university students to a bare minimum. And we saw also the introduction of the free healthcare and the improvement of the health sector generally. We introduced the maternal death audit. We introduced schools of midwifery across this country, which led to the increase in the number of midwives, which resulted in the reduction of maternal and infant mortality in this country. So if you hear today that the maternal and infant mortality has dropped in Sierra Leone, it is as a result of those interventions that we took as a government to focus on maternal death audits and to focus on maternal health and infant health in this country. We improved on immunization. We took it from a bare 43% to over 70% or 80% by the time Ernest Bai Koroma left governance. Nutrition increased greatly under the reign of President Ernest Bai Koroma also. So you saw that under our governance structure, we were on the trajectory of growth and prosperity. We had taken off as a nation, and it was important, and it is important for people to understand this. I always hear people talk about austerity. Austerity is in no way a bad connotation. Austerity measures were put in place because at that time we needed prudent economic management. We had just come out of Ebola, wherein we saw a GDP growth of 20% reduced to minus 21% as a result of the Ebola virus disease. So we needed to introduce measures that will help us bounce back as a nation. And when we introduced those economic management measures that we now know as austerity, it helped us regain our GDP. And we left a GDP growth of about 3.5% to 5% steady growth, which we handed over to the current administration, with a reserve of over $500 million that we handed over to them. An economy that would struggle, will not have a reserve. But we had enough, and we had reserve of over $500 million. That is 6 months, of any activity, any emergency that will happen. We would have been able to sustain ourselves for 6 good months. That is the reserve that we handed over to this administration. I mean, I was not really here to, usher blames. I really wanted us to come here and have meaningful discussions and look at really structural programs that we feel we can discuss to transform this nation. But of course today, despite the figures that Leema is throwing at us, we know how our economy is. We have the worst revenue mobilization in the history of our country. Our domestic revenue mobilization stand at 9.8% to GDP. So for every $100 that we own as a country, it is only about, $9 or so that it is revenue that we generated. The rest, the $91 or so, are debt. So you cannot look at an economy like that and you say you are progressing. I'll tell you that even as we speak, there are people who have not received their salaries for the last month. We have way gone past that under the Ernest Bai Koroma administration. So these are the struggles and the challenges that we continue to face as a country that we really need to look at. Look, for us in opposition, the APC, we proffered solution when we came in 2007, between 2007 to 2018. And we still believe we can proffer solution. And I'll start talking about some. Let us take energy, for example. We know for sure that our country has increased in terms of population. If you look at Freetown, for example, more and more communities have established. And the size of our city has, expanded. The number of inhabitants have increased, which means we need more energy needs. Now, I would think that the best way to approach this for now, we need to zone our city. We continue to rely on one single energy source, and we buy transformers to serve communities. What we really need are substations. You take, for example, one substation to serve the entire Godrich area. You take one substation to serve the entire Aberdeen, Wilkinson Road area. You take one substation, because with the transformers now, when the energy comes, you notice that the electricity goes off and on, and because we have trips. When the energy loads come, the transformers don't take the loads from the community, so they trip. It goes off. And then when it comes, we have the issues of bad light, electricity, and now we have in houses, getting burned, communities, people are losing their properties because of that. So we need to begin to look at these innovative ideas. The same with water. We still rely on the same Guma Dam that was constructed to serve 350,000 people in the city, a city that has grown to close to 2 million people today. When you go around this city, every community has some form of water source. We have to be innovative enough to harness these water sources so that every community has its own dam to supply safe drinking water to those communities, as opposed to relying on that single Guma Dam that does not have the capacity to serve the entire Freetown as it is now. So these are ways that we have to start approaching things. And for God's sake, my colleague here has spoken a lot about extractive minerals, especially, but believe you me, we are not earning up to 10%. And I'll take you to the recent statement from the Minister of Mines himself. For 2024, according to their source, we exported about $754 million worth of minerals out of Sierra Leone. And what did we receive as a country? It was $22 million. That is mere 2.8 to 3%. That is not up to 10%. I mean, this is our main source of revenue. Over $700 million exported, and we only got $22 million as a country. That is unacceptable. So, and this is not something that you can just attribute to a single government. We have a responsibility as a country to sit, review, some of these laws and see how much we can benefit more, especially from our extractives. If you go to the fisheries sector, the marine sector, it is the same story. we are not benefiting much. You go to the tourism sector, it is the same story. We are not benefiting much. You know, so it is time for us really to move away from the, you know, having to attach politics to some of these national issues, to really look at these issues with a national lens, have meaningful discussions. My brother, we always talk about development plans, but we have never really focused on developing an investment plan for this country. And that is why when you look at our city generally, you'll see in one sector hundreds of traders trading the same product. In the evening, just drive along Wilkinson Road, for example, you will see 20 people, 20 girls or guys having oranges on their heads. The same thing, 20 of them, or 20 people lined up selling bread on the same route. It will not occur to one person that, okay, my colleague here is selling bread, let me bring my Kool-Aid on the side. So when you buy the bread, you'll have the urge to buy the Kool-Aid. Instead, they will all be selling bread. You go along the beach, thousands of beach bars doing the same thing. So these are practical ways we ought to start looking at our nation and see how much we can change the mindset, have a solid investment plan. You know, we're struggling with foreign exchange, for example. Just between Sierra Leone and Guinea, or among Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Guinea, if we properly formalize the trade that happened among these three countries, believe you me, we will have a solid, steady source of foreign exchange. But of course, we have not done that. So we allow a lot of smuggling to happen. So unless and until we start looking at, you know, these practical and innovative ways of doing things, you know, we will continue to struggle. So for us in the APC, that is the approach that we'll have to use when we take back governance in this country. We have looked at the country, we have zoned this nation, and I'll tell you, community by community, we know what the problems are, and we are starting to proffer solutions. Discussions must happen between the government and the opposition. That is also one way that we can address a lot of the problems that we have.
Yeah, so largely he has just concurred with some of the issues I raised. The fact that he was trying to deviate from some of the things that were achieved under the SLPP administrations in terms of trunk roads, a very good number of trunk roads. Of course, we are achieved under President Kaba. Yes, the APC did the implementation. For some, whether the implementation was done in terms of the agreement that was contracted by the President Kaba's administration, that was something also this administration also looked at, and the records are out there. He has agreed with me that most of the mining laws or agreement they passed in this country is not benefiting this country, which is quite true, and for which this administration, the BIO-led SLPP administration, has now been able to review the laws so as to help Sierra Leoneans to benefit from our extractive industries. And now what is happening, like he was making mention of the benefits the Treasury actually acquired from the extractive industry, was talking about 22. For 2024, we had an export of $1.2 billion. And what Sierra Leone benefited from in the Treasury was something like $49 to $50 million, which is to say this is something that is coming directly from the fiscal manager, who is the Minister of Finance, which is to say that we are not benefiting more. And so for us, and those agreements passed in Parliament, they are laws. We cannot tamper with them. So the only opportunities we have is that at certain period of time of the agreement, so let's say for instance after every 5 years, is subject to review. And so in the process of those reviews, we will be able to look at opportunities that are available within the review of the mining laws so that we see how best we can double in and bring in policy measures that will help Sierra Leoneans to benefit more. So what is happening now with the new laws that has been reviewed is that the states can now boast of having 10% equity in terms of large-scale mining investment in this country. And over and above all, it is also the vision of the President Julius Maada Bio, to see how much the state itself can venture into the commercialization of the mining sector. That is the state having certain mining percentage that they can go into an investment venture with other investment partners, so as to help Sierra Leone benefit 50-50 into whatever agreement they are going into. So like he said, largely from the extractive industry, which has been the main source of revenue for this nation, we have not benefited much because of the bad laws that we have passed under the APC administration, where in fact some of those laws were taken to Parliament with certificates of urgency, not looking at what Sierra Leone stands to benefit, and that is causing us a lot of pressure. And when you are preparing to come to government, you have to prioritize what you'll be looking at. But there are avalanche of issues that you have to address, and when you run in the government, it's not like you're running a private sector investment. If you run in private sector investment, you can say, I want to prioritize on these areas, and you can stick to that. Nobody has to bother you. But as a government, you have your priorities, but the demands and needs of citizens keep dragging you to still see how much you diversify the little revenue you are collecting in meeting other demands, so that you are able to effectively run the state. And so because we have not got the foundation right, that is why we are still struggling. So sometimes we want to compare Sierra Leone to developed nations. Developed nations, they have had it right in terms of development of their country, in terms of systems, but as much as we are struggling with systems, we're also struggling with certain infrastructural development, and you're also looking at what revenue we are generating is not enough to be able to meet the demands and needs of our people. Like he was talking of how much energy they generated. I think if he was saying actually the truth, we are not going to be in a situation where we are going to start all over, looking at agreements all over, but we would have only built on what they had done. He was talking of living reserve and also physical cash in the central bank for us to start. But we came, we met, donor partners have closed on Sierra Leone. It was only when we came for the first 3 months with our sound economic policy, donor partners came and now realize that this is a serious government that knows exactly how they can roll out the economic program of this country, that they decided to reopen business with Sierra Leone. And so far we have been able to manage ourselves to keep the economy going, and also to keep the nation going, and to keep the fiscal regime going for us as a nation. And we want to see how much we can build on that as a country to make progress. The very reason why the president is saying that as a state, we ourselves need to also participate commercially into our extractive sector. We are seeing the much value addition in terms of the agricultural investment in our country. Take for instance what SOCFIN is doing, and also you look at other agricultural investment, and also under the feed salon program, a lot of citizens are now engaged in agricultural productivity, which is also yielding dividend for the country. And so we are making a steady progress under this particular administration.
So if you spend 7 years in government and you still blame the opposition for your failures, then you are not fit for purpose. When we came in 100 days, we started transforming this country. In 100 days, we started transforming Sierra Leone. We did not spend 7 years blaming Ahmed Tijan Kaba. No, we went straight to work. During the first term of Ernest Bai Krumah, Sierra Leone was a works yard. You had construction happening all across this country. That is what serious governments do. You focus on solving problems rather than blaming your predecessor. That is what governance is all about. And that is why when you're campaigning, you campaign on a manifesto. You sell your manifesto to the people of this country. They buy your manifesto by voting you in. And you're expected to deliver on your manifesto, which they have failed to do. You promised us 20% domestic revenue generation, and we are sitting at 9.2% after 7 years, despite the fact that you are bragging about having a 1.4 billion exports, and we only receive $40 million, and you're still talking about 10%. Clearly, $49 million is not 10% of $1.4 billion. You know that. You know that for sure. So, I mean, also, no donor ever shut its doors on Sierra Leone. It is practical when we are approaching elections. Donor countries, development countries, suspend their activities during electioneering period. After election, because clearly, especially that which was a transitional election, clearly they will expect a change of government. So of course they suspended their programs until after elections, and then they brought back their programs. So no donor ever left Sierra Leone. That is a misrepresentation of the fact. So we have to set these records straight. But the fact of the matter is, just as I started the discussions, we had a track record of performance. When you drive around this city now, we have started seeing potholes again. Those are things of the past. Most of our narrow... Of course. We have a road maintenance fund which collects monies every day. It is 7 years after, after we've left office. Some of these... We met potholes, but then we fixed the roads. There were no potholes on Wilkins Road, there were no potholes on Godrich Road, there were no potholes on Spur Roads, but you drive along those roads now.
I've been saying, I've listened to both of you since you came in. What I've been hearing, blames being, shifted on either side.
These guys.
There is free quality education in Sierra Leone, but I tell you, the statistics are horrific. There are nurses who sit entrance exams to enter the nursing school. This started actually from the APC, so you wouldn't say it's the APC's problem. There had been this free healthcare as well. But let me tell you, just now, a few minutes ago, Charles was here advocating for these children under the Sick Picking Project, and he would tell you that most of these kids are being flown to neighboring countries for medical care. Should have actually been done in Sierra Leone, but we don't have the equipment. But there is free quality, there is free medical ongoing. The quality is not there. He is advocating right now, as I speak to you, for us to buy more advanced equipment. Even if we don't have the professionals, we'll be flying in professionals to use the equipment to take care of our kids. This is the picture. The minimum wage still stuck at 800 leones. People are still battling to buy rice. And you would argue, I know, the APC would say, oh no, in our time it was better. But it is an endless circle of blames. These are the two political parties that have ruled this country since independence. You still can't get it right. And you are saying that it was the best on the Honest by Kuruma regime, but I'll bring you a cocktail of allegations, corruption, monies that were embezzled, the same for the SLPP. It's all the same. There is no change. In fact, people are saying that they are tired of these two parties, that we should have a fresh voice now in Sierra Leone.
Well, fresh voice in terms of leadership.
In the first place, you don't... Governance is continuity. You have to look at even if it's project, it is the same as governance. You look at the indicators and you look at the benchmarks. You have to look at where it was when the APC came to power. We had no functional theater in any of our hospitals. None. We went to theaters where we did not even have theater lights. Doctors were operating on candles. Candles. Minimum wage for doctors was 150,000 leones then, in 2007, 2008. Now, before the introduction of the Free Health Care Initiative, President Nkrumah went around this country. We do not even have medical stores in those districts. We constructed medical stores. We upgraded all our theaters. They all had theater lights with equipment and all installed in all of the theaters. I'm saying this, I worked in the Ministry of Health, so I know what I'm talking about. I can challenge anyone. You heard me speak about the maternal, midwifery schools earlier on. These were all part of those projects. We built 100-bedroom pediatric hospital in Kailan, 500-bedroom projects for Freetown, Lumley, you know, and other communities, 100 beds each. All of the district hospitals were, you know, rehabilitated or reconstructed, constructed a brand new maternity hospital in Pujon. I know all of these things. These were all done before the Free Healthcare Initiative. We had no CT scan in this country. It was under Ernest Bai Kromah regime that we had the CT scan. The radiotherapy section was not functioning properly. They had to buy the equipment for that. The cancer department was not functioning properly. Dialysis all came under Ernest Bai Kromah administration. For God's sake, it's 7 years down the line. It's 7 years. We expected continuity from that. You cannot continue to blame the previous administration after 7 years. You know?
Is it 61 years? Who is to be blamed for the state of Sierra Leone? That's what we're looking at here. And so in this period of 61 years of governance, of independence governance, APC party has ruled Sierra Leone the most. And we are talking of all what we are talking here today, which means we should have moved past even the basic necessities of services for Sierra Leoneans is one that we are still grappling with to provide those basic amenities for our citizens.
You blame the APC for that?
Certainly, because let's take it from the point of Sir Milton, who ruled for almost a very few number of years, say 3 or 4 years, and then we come in Sir Albert Magai, who came in with agricultural investment, which was the mainstream of our revenue generation at the point in time. We established the SLPMB, and there was this palm kernel production. We're also like exporting ginger and cassava. Now, with the advent of Shaka Stevens under his APC regime, his own approach to governance was cripple the economic running of your opposition so that you are able to keep them under control. So for them, power is how you can control people, how you can control people to submission. It's not about how much you improve the livelihood for people. And so if we started getting it wrong, because they collapsed the economy of this country, stopped the railway running, blocked their cultural investment, and also with rampant corruption in the extractive sector, even the NDMC, of course, collapsed, which was first called the SLST, collapsed. We are unable to manage it. In fact, people were now just doing things as much as they are able to bribe their way. That was the order of the day. And also suppression, victimization was the order of the day to keep the citizens under control. And that eventually led Sierra Leone to the civil war. And of course, we've had bad image in the public view as to blood diamond and stuff. And so manipulators exploited us during the war, and we lost so much revenue. And so we came after the war. President Kaba did a lot to even end the war, like I said before, and also created new institutions. And like I said, we also left a very viable reserve and also pay all our debts. We left money for APC to start off. We started on the brink of economic collapse, and we are still grappling with our basic necessities. And here is my brother talking about, we are still blaming government after 7 years. Yes, after 7 years, even when we have set our own priorities, yet we are constrained to still fix the things you are unable to fix under your own priority agenda. So we can still talk about the failures. Now he's talking about the things they achieved under the medical sectors. But when we had the Ebola outbreak in this country, we saw the failure of the APC in the health sector, that they were not doing anything whatsoever, and that cost the life of our citizens in this nation. Now, coming to think, in fact, in the debates, even their own flag bearer candidates subscribe that they can blame government for all the failures, especially within the medical sector, and for the constraints our citizens or lactating or women are going through in terms of maternal health care. Now, if we look at the achievement of this administration under maternal health care, I am not with the figure here now, but it's one area that, of course, we've had before in the media, that this country is making progress because of our approach to governance and how much revenue, or how much of the national revenue government is allocating to the health sector. Even though that was not our own priority agenda, but yet we are constrained to still address some of those areas we thought the APC administration would have done better in those areas. And so we are constrained to handle those
Let me
ones.
now hear from our viewers on.
No skew history here.
Let me.
The fact of the matter is, if you going back to the 60s, Shaka Stevens won election. What prompted, the violence? The first coup d'etat happened because Shaka Stevens won. He was overthrown. He won.
Controversy around the elections. No, let's not go into that.
He was overthrown.
No. It was a controversial election.
APC ruled the most. We had a one-party constitution introduced by Sir Albert, my guy that you're talking about.
The agenda.
It was only
the agenda of the one party of the proposition of the one party
had everybody run under it. And don't forget also, we've had 11 years of civil and brutal war in this country that set us back. So when you're doing your mathematics, APC has ruled the most, that is absolutely not true. Think of all of the coups and all.
So he was talking, and let's not go. But the idea of the one party, the idea of the one party that was proposed.
You cannot have an economy.
I think you've made your point.
You cannot have an economy in a collapse mode and then you have a reserve. That is just not possible.
Okay, briefly, I want to read some comments.
All right, okay. Let me give you time. I will address those areas.
Okay, all right. So there are a few comments on our Facebook page. Khalid is saying, after 63 years of independence, why does Sierra Leone still rank so low in global development indices like health, education, and poverty, despite billions in aid and natural resources? Also, can the government explain why economic growth isn't translating into better living conditions for the average Sierra Leonean? Then Sabi analyzed, but for work for the people and story. Khalid again saying, this is really mana. One, we still import rice, flour, tomato paste, even toothpicks when we have land, water, and people ready to work. What exactly is being manufactured for the average Sierra Leonean? Is our government really serious about development, or is Sierra Leone just a dumping ground for foreign products while local industries are left to die? We keep exporting raw materials like gold, diamond, and timber, but where are the factories to process them? Or is the plan just to keep us poor and dependent forever? Lolo Gasperini is saying, it truly breaks my heart that a small country like Sierra Leone is still struggling with basic needs. If we had been serious since independence, Sierra Leone could have been one of the best in Africa. Sadly, our politicians have failed us time and time again. And one day, they will answer for what they've done to the country. Look at both of them in the studio, still trading blames instead of taking responsibility. It's disheartening. Why can't they come together for the good of the nation? These are individuals who had nothing before entering politics, yet today they rank among the wealthiest in Sierra Leone, while countless many young people in the country continue to suffer in silence. It's truly heartbreaking. Mos D is saying, God indeed has patience. Listening to these fellas, with all due respect, is really depressing. Everything these fellas have said or saying clearly shows the race to the bottomless pit. After 6 decades, no proper clean water supply, no sober electricity supply, basic daily diet is becoming increasingly difficult. The level of quality education is declining by the minute. Lack of good infrastructure, very poor health care facilities, etc. Honestly, the great men and women that worked so hard for our independence from the colonial system will be turning their heads in their grave today. Lolo Gasperini is saying again, both APC and SLPP have ruled Sierra Leone since independence, yet there is little to show for it. Unlike countries like Ghana and Nigeria, which moved on from their independence era political parties, embraced new leadership, Sierra Leone is still stuck with the same 2 parties. This is one of the reasons we are lagging behind in development compared to our neighbors. There are a lot of messages, actually. I will not be able to read all of them, so I'll now give you a chance to just a few seconds, maybe a minute or two to summarize. I'll start with you.
Let him go.
Okay, Tunis, you've listened to the messages. Everyone is blaming the 2 parties, despite, the decent analysis you've made in the studio this morning. But there are a lot of people who think that the APC and the SLPP are to blame for our backwardness.
The people are on the edge because clearly it's been like a merry-go-round. And that is why when the discussion started, I did say that, I was really hoping and I was really here for us to have a discussion focused on the issues and how we profile solutions. I really did not want to go into but then of course, I cannot sit here and you're throwing blames, especially blames that are not factual on my party, that I will not respond and set the record straight. But the fact of the matter is, like I said, we are a party of solutions, regardless of what anybody says. We have a record. We have record. But yeah, we've been here every party has been for a long while. The SSPP is the first party to govern this country. You can say that. And we've had different eras of governance. The era that we are in today is different from what we were in when some of us were not even born yet. So I cannot keep going to history. I want to move forward. And that is where we are looking as a party.
How do we care better?
We have to have practical approach to solution. If you go to any advanced countries, you will not see, transformers all over the place. You see substations because they know the population has increased, the communities will continue to expand, so each substation will cater for its own community and population. I think that is the approach that we need to look at. When we do, of course, we have to look at that seriously. When you do that, we'll have to transition, into zoning our city, and also making sure that, when you do that, even if you decide to privatize, for example, it is easier to do that way because then you'll have different private companies take on different communities and just provide the basic. It is the same with water. It is the same with healthcare. And then when you look at, the practicality of it, yeah. But the thing is also, I think we have to holistically have discussions, national discussions as to how we approach governance. The divisiveness is too much in this country. We have to start talking as a country and as a people, genuinely having the interest of the people at the fore of our activities. This idea that, opposition should not interact with government or government should not interact with opposition has to end. That is not how it is in other countries. And we can only advance when we start talking, when we start having practical solutions to problems, whether it is education, whether it is energy, whether it is healthcare, agriculture and all. Feed salon could be brilliant, but maybe the method of implementation may be wrong, but then the opposition will have a practical solution to how we can implement it better. So these are discussions we ought to have.
So I think I have speak to the topic. We are here looking at the state of Sierra Leone, who is to be blamed. Mm-hmm. And the reason why we have to go back to the history, because if you cannot determine the future if you don't look back into the past, because the past has to determine the present, where you are. And then from the present, you want to project into the future. You have to know what led you to where you are today and how do you want to project into the future. And so the reason why you have to go back into history. But if going back into history will expose the failure or the bad approach to governance by other set of people, they become very uncomfortable when you want to go back to history. And you cannot address your problem, you cannot address your situation if you don't go back to look into history. Because it is only when you go back into history that you are able to see the mistakes that you've made, that has led you to where you are today, and how much you want to correct those mistakes to project into the future. So now I'm looking at the extractive industry for our economy. I think we have to be decent in our approach. Please let me make a point to Sierra Leoneans to understand. Now on this area, let me take my time really to explain in our local parlance for our people. I'm just summarizing that. Yes. So now, me people in Sierra Leone, I want for make we understand it. The mining policies them where we get now the main source and the way we get with money for able to move this country go forward. Over time, we don't get a bad policy agreement. We don't help this country make progress. And when they laws and they go to parliament, then pass them. Any government where they can, they tamper with them laws and they. So as much as them laws and they bad, we know they help we for progress as a nation. We're not able to tamper out, and so we continue in that suffering. But a government will get an initiative like President Bio initiative will get. How much we able for navigate? We were out of these bad laws where we don't approach. We know the benefit we as a government, it's not the benefit as a nation, it's not benefit as a people. What do we capable for do? Now we review the laws, and this review of the law, we make sure say the states of Sierra Leone get 10% of equity in their large-scale mining agreements the way they do. Secondly, let the government self also establish a corporation where government go before put money and partner with other investment partners, and so that when we go into mining investment, the process where they can go able shape 50-50, where government go able for at least I'm making my point. Where government go able for use that one day for make this country and push this country go before. So now the new approach than the way the president use against the or this government don't use under President Leone leadership against them bad mining laws then where we achieve we're not able for help this country. So we are making progress. And I feel say after some period like 5 years, when we they review some of them mining agreements, then they some of the concessions then where they go free way for able to make money out of, then one and they will go able for look into run out properly, and also government self go able for enter into the economic space where instead go able for undertake things that we go to make we improve this country. So the reason why they say let we look at would for be blamed from the period of independence to now. Now for let we for know who say we don't go wrong, how we go correct them, and then for determine the future. So the whole idea about the one-party state where Sir Albert Mugabe proposed, now for unite the country, because only when we united, we also minimize the tendency for manipulatory as a nation, and then we go able for utilize with natural resources better. So I think say this is not the way we are able for communicate. So far, how much the SLPP are able for help this nation and for still work along with your brother there, even though their approach sometimes can be destructive within the opposition. Like we put transformer, they go, they burn them. For all not able to make progress, for all look bad, and that is not how you build a nation.
So misleading.
So now that's a good for
Right. Thank you so very much indeed. Lahai, Lawrence Leema. Leema is the National Publicity Secretary of the Sierra Leone People's Party. And we've also been hearing from Honorable Sidi Yaya Tunis. He's National Publicity Secretary of the main opposition, All People's Congress Party in Sierra Leone. You've heard from both of them. Either of them is not accepting blame for the country's failure, but to each his own. And would only wish that this place be transformed to the paradise on earth one day. Maybe perhaps there is a savior who is coming. Who knows?